Welcome into Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. Happy Tuesday, everyone. My name is Joel Goldberg, and thank you for watching. Thanks for all of you that watch live every single day. Thanks for making this a part of your routine. And then so many others are watching it later on YouTube, on Facebook, and then links going up as well on LinkedIn. And we'll continue to grow. This has been so much fun. Again, couldn't do it without the support of my friends at Enterprise Bank and Trust. They've got the hashtag that just applies to everyone right now. No stopping you. Want to let everybody know about a favorite in the Goldberg house, and that would be Casey Cattle Company. They're based up in Weston, Missouri. They are locally owned and operated, veteran owned and operated. Patrick Montgomery, who's the founder, was an Army Ranger serving our country, and had the dream of coming back and maybe living in the veterinary world. He was in school for that and took a different path. Ended up forming Casey Cattle Company, Wagyu beef. They deliver to all 50 states. And right now, they'll deliver right to your door. So jump on their website, caseycattlecompany.com. It is a staple here. And like so many others, we are eating in the house every single night. So we're all in that boat together. My guest, who really interesting because we were scheduled to connect, and I think that would have happened over coffee or lunch or whatever it was, and that was at least in the works, or we'd been introduced. And right after that, all of this went down. So we've actually spent a lot of time together the last few weeks, but it's been in the way that many of us are spending time right now, and that would be virtually. So it's time for me to bring in from Elevate Simply, Brett Simpson. And Brett, I'll let you explain your company. It's a consultancy working with a lot of different companies, really digging into that culture. And I think that's one of the reasons initially why you and I were introduced together. I speak about culture. You help companies figure out what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong with some really amazing proprietary tools. But first off, nice to see you again in the way that I've only ever seen you, virtually.
Likewise, Joel. I can't wait till we can actually meet in person. Seems strange that just 4 weeks ago, I was having coffee meetings and I haven't seen anybody in person since. It's bizarre.
It's weird. It's crazy. It's also, it's our new norm at this point, and this will pass. Although whatever the new norm is will be different than the old norm, and so we're figuring all that. And I want to ask you about that too, because I think that a lot of what you're doing, if not the process, at least what you're seeing will change within companies. But let's start with this. Simply spoken, and I know that you've got clients and companies all over the country. Tell me about Elevate Simply.
So Elevate Simply is a consultancy. I started it in 2011. I was working at a software company and I was ready to go back into consulting, which is where I started my career. And so I love the dynamicness of consulting, seeing the different challenges and problems and opportunities companies have in working with the folks. And so that's why Elevate Simply started. We started off for the first 2/3 of our existence consulting with big companies, Fortune 50 companies in telecommunications, primarily around the country. But for the last 15 months have really changed focus and focused on C-suite strategic insights and alignment, and have developed a couple of different tools around that capability, which is more in need now than it's ever been, quite frankly, with this coronavirus. So it's been really interesting to see that change, even in the last few weeks, going from pre-coronavirus to, now we're in the coronavirus kind of new economic reality. So it's really been fascinating, unfortunately, to see it happen from so many different respects. But I think it'll change things going forward.
So I want to talk about how you evaluate and what the process looks like, but I'd almost rather work backwards here and just get your opinion right now over the last 4 weeks of what you're hearing from companies. A lot of your clients, and if they can either afford you or are sitting there thinking, look, we need to take action here. It's generally companies that are very successful or wanting to get to that next level, and their worlds, like all of us, like all of ours, have changed. What are you hearing from some of those CEOs and those C-suite executives?
It's what you said. The biggest word is change, right? And unfortunately, right now, we don't know what that change is going to look like, or we don't know what the full impact of what that change is, right? I mean, obviously, you have layoffs. You have people that are conserving and preserving cash. You have people that don't know if their business is going to stay in business. I mean, depending if they're essential or not, or they can operate on this work from home reality that we are in right now. And so one of the common themes I've noticed, regardless of where a client is in the country, the type of client that they are, the size of company that they are, is a renewed focus on the people. And just that understanding that in pre-coronavirus terms, it was our capital, our knowledge capital goes up and down that elevator every single day. And now it's those are the people that we're interacting with at home. And so I think there's absolutely a renewed focus on the human capital that we have, and making sure that we understand, what the impacts of this are on them. This is, we haven't experienced anything like this. And so it's new for everybody. And so being able to focus on that, I think, is really what's going to set apart those that exit this in a successful way and those that don't.
It's interesting, and you said this to me earlier before we were live. It's all about the people, and I think it always has been, or maybe if it hasn't been, it always should have been. So I wonder, like look in terms of my job, and we can get locked into wins and losses, and people get, part of being a sports fan is you get a little bit irrational and you get crazy about these things, and it's life and death, and it's not, of course not. And is it about the wins and losses? Ultimately, that leads you to the championship, but really in the end, it's about the people. You go talk to Dayton Moore with the Royals, and the amount of time that he and his staff spent to bring the right people in. It's not just about the talent. Doesn't mean go find the nicest guys and, hey, all that, nice guys finish last type of stuff. But what it does mean is that talent also is being vetted to have the right type of people. And those right type of people take care of other people. They're part of community. I mean, there's so many layers to that. So to me, what do I do every day? I interview, these players, and I talk about them, well, during normal times. But ultimately, I'm a conduit between the players and as a matter of fact, and I wasn't leading to this, but I just saw our first comment, and feel free to jump in. This is the first non-related to Rounding the Bases live comment, but I thought it was funny. Kevin Russell says, "I'd give anything to see you covered in a Salvi splash right now." I would too, because we only had one last year, by the way, and it was the final game of the year when Alex Gordon and Salvador Perez brought out the bucket to dump it on Ned Yost in his final game as manager, all-time wins leader in retirement. But back to the point, this has always been about the people. I wonder, were we just in the hustle and bustle and the numbers and everything the analytics, everything that goes in, did we lose focus on that at times?
I think a little bit. I think there's so much competition out there that, it's easy to get distracted and to let the people side of things kind of fall by the wayside, our relationships, our interactions, and just say, you know what, we'll get to that. Once we accomplish this or we do this, then we will get to that. But now, we're forced into, we are being forced into renewing and rejuvenating those relationships and placing a value on them. I mean, you think about folks that have been laid off. They've had some sort of value that has been placed on what they do. Now, it may or may not be fair. It may be that the business is just out of business, or it's one of these non-essential businesses that needs to shut down, like a restaurant or so forth. And so there was no choice. But the bottom line is that focus on the people is really going to come to light, especially as people have time to reflect and think for themselves, as most of us are sitting at home trying to do our work. We're not in the office, right? So we're at home, we're trying to think of, hey, is this, and I've heard from a lot of people, is this where I want to be? Is this what I want to be doing? Is this the type of company? Is it the type of environment? All of those kind of things. And I really do believe that will stay in the forefront as we exit this.
Yeah, stay in the forefront, and maybe in more of a crystal clear type of way. I don't know where this is going, but it so often we have a moment of adversity or tragedy. We all go through them, whether it be, something personal, death, or, some kind of scare, health scare. And then we say, all right, I'm never doing that again. And then we kind of go back to the way we were. This just, and so we'll see. But this feels different because this isn't just a little blip 1 week in in your life. This is weeks and weeks and potentially months, and not just me, not just you. It's everyone. And I was talking to a CEO this morning of a big company. He's got about 1,000 people. I think that's right. Maybe it's more. Now I lose my mind, but it's an essential business. And so, I think the thought for those essential business logistics type of stuff is, oh, they're good, but not all their clients are good. And so if they suddenly get to a point where they can't service their clients, all right, they've been able to keep everyone, but they're bracing for a rough Q2. So what does that start to look like? How do they keep all of their people? How do they keep all their people engaged? What about all those people right now that are saying, wait a minute, how am I going to be in a month or 2 months? Am I going to be employed or not employed? I mean, this is a company that's always hiring more and more and more, and they're planning on hopefully hiring more again in July. And actually interesting that they think that some of those hires will come from other industries like the restaurant industry, and where there'll be availability. So this thing is changing by the day. What's interesting to me about it, Brett, is even the businesses that appear to be unaffected, everyone's affected in some way or another.
Yeah, no one operates in a bubble, right? None of, like you said, none of these, they have suppliers, they have vendors, they have contractors, they have customers, and there's nothing, I would suspect there is no supply chain that has been uninterrupted during this time. A couple of thoughts pop into my mind. One is, I have one grandparent still living, my grandfather, who turned 95 last Saturday.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, and I was talking to him about this, and, he said, Brett, in my lifetime, he was born in 1925. I've never experienced anything like this. And he went, the day after graduating high school, he went off to World War II, so he's been through a world war at a young age, but he's never been through anything like this. The other thing, and this is more in line with what you were saying, I was talking to a gentleman this morning, and what he was saying is, historically, we will see companies that may be sick or need help. We may see industries that are taking a downturn, but it's never been where the economy, almost every industry, if not every industry, and every company are all sick at the same time. And so that's why this is so, and I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but I thought that's a very interesting way. When we have a company that's sick, we send in specialists, right, to revive the company or bring it back around, turn it around, whatever you want to say. But now we've got all three of those layers that are sick, and so it's a massive change.
It's interesting. I've told a lot of people that my most recent speech, I don't do a whole lot of my business promotion on here in terms of my speaking. I mean, I'm not opposed to telling people about it, obviously, but
Yeah.
The most recent speech that I created last fall was basically culture during the tough times, relying on your culture during the tough times. And I built that knowing that just like the Royals are coming off back-to-back 100-loss seasons, but their culture has been phenomenal, and that's what's going to help pull them through as they grow these young players. But I thought, what company hasn't gone through a tough time at some point? And
Right.
we all go through our ups and downs. So I knew that it was a presentation that might resonate with companies that are looking for a little. I didn't realize everyone was going to be sick at the same time. Is exactly what you're saying. So everyone is going through this. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what you do with Elevate Simply. Before I get there, let's go back to your background beforehand, because we've got a lot of. I interview a lot of entrepreneurs on this, and certainly on my weekly podcast, Rounding the Bases, the audio version. And I'm just curious about your journey and how you found yourself with this company. 2011, I think you said, because I know that it was a long journey yourself to get there.
Yeah, sure. I started in consulting at Anderson Consulting when it existed after my after graduate school. It's now Accenture, one of the biggest consulting companies in the world. Loved my time there, but I've always been entrepreneurial, and so I've owned a retail soccer store. That was a huge failure. Learned a lot, lost money, but I wouldn't trade the lessons I learned. I've started a couple other companies. I've invested in companies. I've invested in venture capital. And still have investments in that. And so I've just been a part of big and small companies, and throughout my journey, very I don't know if risk averse, maybe or risk tolerant, I should say it that way. I'm fairly risk tolerant in terms of what I try to do, not in a foolish way. I do have two daughters in college, which is costing me a ton of money, but thank goodness they're getting some scholarships. But it's just my journey has been one of being able to be an entrepreneur, a person who worked at a big company for big companies, and then also working in small companies. So I've had the benefit of seeing a lot of different companies in terms of where that has, or how that has led to what I do today. Through that journey, one of the things that I had noticed was that CEOs, C-suite folks, they're in a lonely position. It's a lonely position when it comes to accountability and responsibility. Everybody wants to talk to them, and everybody wants to get their words in and meet them and be associated with them. But in terms of what they do in their day-to-day operations, they are, the single person at the top when I'm talking about the CEO, and it's a lonely position. And I haven't met one yet that can read minds. And so, they don't always know what everybody around them is thinking, and everybody's focused. Everybody has their own lane of what they need to be doing and working on. And so what I've done with Elevate Simply is created this tool called Align Well. And it is a strategic insight and alignment capability. And it's a survey. It's 34 questions, very short, takes no more than 30 minutes. And it's the most fun I've ever had, Joel. I love doing it. I've worked with upwards between 40 and 50 companies over the last year, a little over a year, around the country. And so it's been a lot of fun to do that. And what's been interesting is this transition that we've seen over the last month, and so there's never a greater time, or there's never been a greater time of need that I've been aware of for leadership alignment and strategic insight than we have right now because of all the change.
What's different right now? What pops out right now to you that is needing addressed more? I mean, I'm talking to CEOs, and look, they're going to bed at night worried about keeping all their employees and how to communicate with them. What are you hearing?
The biggest thing that's popping up right now is focus. Where do I focus, right? And so it's, you think of yourself, a friend of mine used this, and I really love it, which is, if you're a carpenter and you have 100 nails to drive in, which 3 do you drive in first, right? And so that's what it's about. Each of these companies, every company has finite human and financial resources. So where do you allocate them right now? You can't just shotgun approach this and continue what you were doing 4 weeks ago, because the world has changed so much. So it's a matter of saying, let's diagnose, right? We've got a lot of doctors, we've got a lot of medical professionals that are doing an amazing job of diagnosing problems, right? And so it's the same thing in business, is to say, okay, if our business, do we believe it's sick? If it is, what is the issue? If we don't believe it's sick, we still need to find out, how do we prevent it from becoming sick? And so that's what we try to do with Align Well, is to say, okay, you know what? Let's gather this information from these senior leadership teams, provide it to the C-level folks, and say, hey, let's use the collective brain power and insight from everybody, combined with the outside external knowledge, and see what we come up with here to take the next steps towards, remaining a going concern, exiting this coronavirus time as best we can.
What about going back before the coronavirus? Was there one, or were there one or two things that seemed more common or needed to be addressed more frequently, or is it completely different by company? Because I know that, and you showed me, a lot of what Alignwell does, and I don't want to give away any, secrets, obviously, in terms of proprietary, but what pops out more often, or is it just unique by the company?
There are some common themes. I mean, every company has their unique twist or take or results when we go through this. So it is not a cookie cutter approach. But in terms of some of the common themes, one of the things that I was finding pre-coronavirus was a lack of alignment around purpose and priorities within companies. And this is at the C level. We start at the C level and we go from there. And so that's one of the biggest things that I think is surprising to CEOs. And I'll give you a simple example or a simple exercise to do is sometimes when I'm working with clients, before they even do Alignwell, before we get into Alignwell, what I say is hey, next time you're in a leadership meeting with the C-suite or with your senior executives, whatever their titles may be, have everybody take out a piece of paper and write down the purpose of the company. Okay. And then you collect it and then read it aloud. Don't put names on it or anything like that. But it's shocking how different the purposes are that senior executives will find if they do that simple exercise. Then you do that same thing with priorities. Say, hey, what are the top 3 priorities? And it just devolves from there. And it doesn't mean it's not a sign of incompetence or anything like that. What it's a sign of is focus. Where are we focused? What are the things that are important to us, and so forth. So that's what's been pretty interesting. To kind of see how that's evolved.
So let me take that a step further, and this leads to the name of Align Well, trying to align that purpose with those priorities. How often, I don't know if I'm too simply putting it that way, but how often does the purpose not align with the priorities? Meaning maybe they have the purpose figured out, but they're not going about it the right way. Or maybe their priorities are right, but they don't know what that purpose is.
That is a very frequent occurrence. It's a good question. And we take it a step further to say, okay, you have purpose, you have strategy. Do those align? And in between there, you have the priorities that determine what that strategy is. But take it even further. And really, this is where it comes down to the people, is every individual in a company, for the most part, they want to understand how what they do on a daily basis adds value to the company. So it's that traceability from day-to-day tactical execution to strategy to priorities to purpose. So it's all the way up the chain. And if there's any misalignment at the top in the C-suite, that's only exacerbated the further down in the company you go. And so that's why it's important. And one of the things you mentioned this earlier in terms of the talk about culture, there are a lot of amazing culture-based tools out there and behavioral tools out there. And one thing I do want to, kind of just make clear here is those are great. And so people ask me frequently to say, hey, we use these tools, X, Y, or Z. What is the difference between Alignwell and those tools? And I say, hey, listen, keep using those tools, Culture Index, Strength Finder, DISC, all these, because they tell us how to work together, but they don't tell you what to work on. And so that's what Alignwell does, is it tells you what to work on. And I've found that's what the feedback I've received recently from CEOs is to say, that's helpful. We have other tools that we use to figure out how to work together, but understanding the collective mindset of the executive team to say, what do we work on? What are the opinions that this is anonymous too, that may not want to be brought up in a group setting? They can do that this way.
Yeah, and it's a reminder too that there are different types of tools. You're not doing the Culture Index. This is totally different. I actually took the Culture Index test, if that's what you want to call it, a couple weeks ago. It's the second time I'd done it with Gretchen Adamson and John Wright. I don't know if you know those guys.
I do.
Not, but,
yeah.
Beyond HR Solutions. John is Casey Wright's dad. I'll give everybody plugs now. Casey was one of my first guests on the show, but Casey is the president of Chief of Staff. And that's a whole other story because they're pivoting like everybody else, and trying to place people with jobs, and that world has changed. But it was interesting. I bring it up just because Gretchen, when she looked at those results of the survey, said, you're expending a lot more energy right now than you should be. Like, well, that kind of makes sense as we're all trying to pivot and figure some things out here. So that was maybe not a surprise, but interesting. And those surveys, by the way, are fascinating to me on a personal level, and certainly for an employer looking to hire, because they really, I love the way you said mind readers. We're not mind readers. I can't tell you how many times I've heard Tony La Russa, the Hall of Fame manager way back, used to say, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have a crystal ball. But these type of tools enable you to have that crystal ball. It's the same thing. You're able to pick up the hood of that car and get in there and diagnose based on what you're seeing. So you're able to do that. You're able to get that alignment. I know I asked you this in a phone call at some point, but how easy is it then to get that buy-in? Hey, here's what's going well. Here's what you need to work on. Because they are hiring you to do this, are they eyes wide open, ears wide open, ready to make those changes, or is there some resistance sometimes?
There is resistance sometimes, but that's why we focus at the CEO, right? Is because any change management practitioner will know this, but unless you get sponsorship for change at the very top, it's going to be very hard to change anything anywhere else in the organization. And so that's why we work with the CEO and the C-suite team, is to say, look, you all need to buy into this first. You need to sponsor it, and then it will flow down from there. And so what I love to hear when we do this, when we do Align Well, my favorite two responses are, I didn't know that, or that surprises me. Because then I feel like I've actually added value. I've told them something that they didn't know. I don't want to tell them a bunch of stuff that they already know. That's the impression of consultants today, is that we look at your watch and tell you what time it is. I've heard that joke a million times. But no, I want to share something with them that they don't know. Caveat is, it's coming from the people around them. This isn't me coming in and taking a look, sitting in their office for 2 weeks, assessing their business. It's me asking questions in a certain way that say, this is what your team thinks. They might not want to tell it to you, but this is what they think. And now is as good a time as any to do that. And so anyway, that's, and Joel, that's the other reason we've said, as of mid-March, we've said, look, through the end of May, we're going to do Align Well at no cost. Because of coronavirus, because there's so much need for it right now. Obviously, we're trying to build our business as well, but this is something that we can do that our clients have found tremendous value in, and we're making it available to folks.
Well, and what you're doing there is what so many people, so many companies are doing right now, is just help others out. Just get out there and take care of, as you said before, it's about the people.
Yeah.
And I think that if we get, and I'm not saying to devalue yourself, right? I mean, this is all personal decisions and certainly strategic decisions, but this is a different world right now. And I think that if you are able to, however that looks, just get out there and take care of people, it'll come back in some form or another. And that doesn't mean, okay, you'll get the deal later. It might mean somebody just saying, hey, I worked with Elevate Simply. It's unbelievable how they looked out for me during this time, that type of thing. There's so much good in the community. We've been focusing on that here on this video podcast, that when you can get out, it's a mindset thing too, right? I mean, we're all focused on winning. We're all focused on whatever that looks like, in sports terms, winning the game, and winning the battle. In the business world, it might be closing that sale or finding that new client, and that stuff's all going to take care of itself. But it's a total shift. So I'll wrap it up then with this. If you could give advice right now to anyone that is watching, you're able to get underneath the hood of the car. You're able to read those minds with the tools that you have, and what Align Well is able to do to help so many of your companies or your clients. What's a catch-all good piece of advice right now for so many of those executives out there that are trying to still figure this out?
That's a good question. I think I would say, be flexible, right? Be agile. That's one of the things we heard when it comes to software development, agile software development. But your ability, and entrepreneurs are generally pretty good at this, but your ability to be agile and to react or even be proactive is going to be what the saving grace, I think, in this time, because no one knows what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know when it's going to happen. But your ability to be agile and have that agility to make decisions and pivot when needed, I think that's going to be huge.
We will get back to normal. It'll be a bit of a different normal. We just don't know when. And I mean, that's, I was talking to this CEO this morning, and he said, everybody's asking, when are we coming back to the office? It's the same. He's like, I don't have an answer, and we have an idea, but we don't really know. It's the same thing when people ask me every day, when is baseball coming back? I can give you some ideas, but I don't know. Or if you really want to put it simply, like, when am I getting my next haircut? Unless we do it at home here, I don't know. So I think everybody can relate to that. I mean, that's to me. We'll wrap it up with this. That to me has been the most interesting part of all of this, is the fact that everyone is in this boat together in some form or another.
That's right. Yeah, they're out of this are going to come a ton of unintended consequences. You said it right, is to say, hey, when the boss calls and says, hey, guess what? The building's open again. What is the boss going to say when the employees are like, why would I commute when I've just proven I can work just as effectively from home? And maybe it's not every day of the week, but 1 or 2 days a week. Why can't I work from home if I just proved that I could do it? And so there's going to be a lot of unintended consequences that come out of this, and it'll be interesting to see how we all react to it.
It will be to be determined, but that's always the case. We're always pushing forward. It's just a little bit different right now. Brett, obviously everyone can get a hold of Brett at Elevate Simply, and you can find him on LinkedIn too. If you look at any of my posts, he'll be linked there today. So I appreciate the insight. It's a fascinating discussion. I know it's one that you and I have had offline, and we'll continue to do so. But I really appreciate you sharing what you're doing with Elevate Simply and getting that message out there to so many that are watching either live or later on. And the beauty of these things is that they live out there. Those links live out there tomorrow, next week, next month. And we all have some time right now to be looking on the computer and looking at some stuff. So thanks for taking the time today.
Hey, Joel, thank you for this, and thank you for what you're doing with this entire program.
I appreciate it. So great to visit with Brett Simpson. That's going to do it for episode 16. Wow, 16 episodes. We're on week number 4. A couple things. If you want to get a hold of me, you could do so at joelgoldbergmedia.com. See, I got all these little toys here. I'm trying to still figure out how to, or I could just put it up like that, and then maybe the ticker's not as obnoxious. I'm learning to do all these things that we've got people in the TV truck that do it much better than me. But if you want to reach me, you could do so. This podcast is booking up fast every single day, which means I've got decisions to make and all that, but it's part of the fun of being able to tell all of these stories. I told you at the top of the show about my friends at KC Cattle Company. Check out the website, and if they've got items that are sold out, product that's sold out, they're constantly updating that. They're in demand because the food is so good. So check them out. The steaks, the burgers, or the ground beef, and we do burgers, tacos, meatloaf, all that type of stuff. It's been unbelievable. So they do deliver. They deliver to all 50 states. If you're watching this outside of Kansas City, veteran owned and operated. So hope you'll check them out. And of course, my friends at Enterprise Bank and Trust, #NoStop. And you could not do this without them. We'll be back with another episode, number 17, running live tomorrow at noon. I'm Joel Goldberg. Thanks for watching Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. See you back here tomorrow on Wednesday.